All right, let's take a quick look around. And I think of all the shops that we're going to tour as we start this cabinet shop tour series we'll work on in the future, is this shop will resonate with you at home more than any other shop because it's a startup shop. They've only been at it for 8 months. They haven't had several years to perfect their equipment and their setup. Something else you'll notice about these shops is they're always laid out to where the material comes in one door, runs through the milling process, comes out here into the floor to be built, and then runs out the other door. Several factors affect the layout though, such as your doors, the size and shape of your shop. This is only a 4,000 square foot work area. But the biggest factor to laying out these shops is power. If you'll notice back here on the back wall, there's several machines clustered, and that's because that's where the power comes from.
Welcome back to Bowers Creations. It happens to be Friday, the day after July 4th. You can still hear them popping fireworks in the background. I hope everybody enjoyed their Independence Day, made it home safe, and had a good time. Anyways, this week, since y'all enjoyed the DIY organizational video so much, I figured we'd go take a look in a production cabinet shop. But first, I want to give you a little bit of background about my experience. So I've been involved in residential custom cabinetry for over 25 years now. I started building cabinets right out of high school. I built cabinets for about 13 years full time. I really enjoyed the process, seeing the final product come together. I moved my way through the shop fairly quickly, learned my way around. However, in 2010, I got selected to join the IBEW Electrical Apprenticeship Program. I was kind of enjoying that. I enjoy working with my hands, period. However, to supplement my income, I fell back on my cabinet roots, and I actually built cabinets right here in this garage. I didn't have a $10,000 garage ornament at the time. Anyways, I finished my apprenticeship in 2015 and obtained my Texas Journeyman Electrical License. And ever since, I've worked in large commercial and industrial sites as an electrician. However, in my downtime, I've always fallen back into the cabinets. I've helped friends out. I have several friends and peers that own cabinet shops locally, and I just enjoy the woodworking. And that's how we got to where we are today.
So right here is where everything begins in the cabinet shop. This is called the cutout table. This is usually your nicest table saw. It has a throwout table large enough to accommodate a full sheet of plywood or particle board with ease. This one happens to have an extra feature. We've installed a router insert in it. This gives you a huge router table. You could use a table saw fence to build jigs and other fences off of. Anyways, once the sheet goods get cut to size through the cutout saw, they go out on the floor and they're ready for assembly. So one thing I forgot to show you, on the parts for the boxes, if they happen to need adjustable shelves, they got to come over to this area first. What this is called is a line boring machine, and what it does is it drills several adjustable shelf holes all at once. That drills up to 16 inches of holes in one press, and that's how we get our adjustable holes for our cabinet boxes. So as the cabinet boxes begin the assembly process, another crew member may come over here to what we call the ripping saw. This saw is usually set up on a long, narrow table. It's a lot rougher. The lumber tends to tear up the table a lot more. That's why it's so necessary to have a ripping saw in your cabinet shop. And then the lumber comes straight to the planer for milling. So, interesting fact, a woodworker, he may go to his ripping saw or his table saw and rip him a board a little bit large, and then go over to his joiner to mill off the saw marks on the edges of the board. The cabinet shop, however, we rip so much material the same size, we mill all of our end grain on the planer. And how we do that is we'll take 3-4 boards wide and run them through the planer like this. You clamp them together with your hands And that way you could process several boards that are the same thickness at the same time and clean your saw marks off the edges of your board. So once the lumber is milled to spec, it comes over here to the crosscut station. This shop has a radial arm saw and a miter saw set up for that purpose. The radial arm saw is primarily used for door panels, so it only has a 4-foot cut on it. However, the miter saw has about a 9-foot cut on it. Everything in a cabinet shop is only 2, 3, 4 inches wide, so a 10-inch miter saw will cut 90% of the stuff in a cabinet shop. For the fence stop, instead of spending a whole lot of money, in my particular fashion, I went and got some Unistrut and some scrap metal, and we built this fence stop. If you'd like to see how I done that, you're gonna have to subscribe to my channel, because we will be building one for the house in the next couple weeks. And as soon as we can find someone who needs some, I'll show you how I build these garage cabinets, just like mine, depending on where you source your lumber, for somewhere around $10 a linear foot. So once all your face frame parts are built, or your door parts, they all come right here to this shop table. This cabinet shop doesn't have a face frame table or a door clamp. It's all done right here on this table. Here's one pro tip for those at home. Anytime you're building a shop table, always leave your top hanging over a couple 2-3 inches for clamping and other jig purposes. So once the face frames and drawers are built, they go back out into the floor to be installed. A little side note I forgot to mention about face frames. This shop still uses the same jig that you buy at Home Depot. They don't have any fancy machinery. I actually have pretty high reserve for these things, especially if you could get the older model like mine versus the cost of machinery. But this is all this shop uses to drill all the pocket holes for their face frames. The cabinet doors, however, they have to go through a whole nother process. This would be your door department here. So all the door parts need several cuts to get them completed. So they come over here to these shapers. What these are gigantic router tables, except for they use a knife that's anywhere from 4 inches to 7 inches in diameter. The reason why a cabinet shop would want to have several of them is some of them are real finicky to get set up and fine-tuned in. So you'd have some dedicated for certain tasks, and others you'd use for your panel raising and outside details and to be changed up for new jobs. Once all the parts are milled, they again come back to the table, the doors are assembled, and then they move over into this wide belt sander. So for anybody who's never seen one of these contraptions, what this is called is a power feeder. What it does is feed stock for you. It could be used on table saws. Here it's set up on a shaper, and what this allows you to do is feed stock faster, keeps your fingers out of the way, and it also holds it down tight to the table, making a lot more precise cut on your door parts. Alright, for those who's never seen one of these, what this is called a wide belt sander. This one happens to be 24 inches wide. They make them a whole lot wider than that. I've seen all the way up to 54 inches wide. It's just one giant belt sanding belt. And what this will allow you to do, anything that'll fit in that 24 inches, you could sand super smooth. You could do heavy sanding all the way up to light sanding. There is still a finish sanding process involved afterwards, but it takes out a whole lot of time in the sanding process. So here's an interesting fact some of you may not know. The sander happens to require 3-phase power, but our service is only single phase. So how do we get this sander running? Well, you could order what they call a roto-phase. What this is a 10 horsepower motor. Basically, you feed the motor backwards with single phase power, and then it produces 3-phase power. And that's how you could run a 3-phase piece of equipment on single phase power. Your cabinet doors then come right out of the wide belt sander and move right over to the edge sander. This is a 36-inch horizontal belt sander. And what we do with it is we smooth all the edges of the doors around all four sides of the door. It kind of finishes out the edges. That's the last step we do on the edges. Once we're done edge sanding the doors, if they have an outside detail, they go back over to the shapers to cut an outside detail on them. And then of course they come to the table again for finish sanding. Once the finish sanding is complete, they come over to this hinge machine, and what this does is drill the holes for the hinges, and then also allows you to press the hinges into the door. Once that's done, the doors then go out into the floor and they get installed on the cabinets as well. At that point, your cabinet should be pretty much ready to go out the door to go be installed in its new home.
I hope you liked that quick little rundown of the inner workings of a custom cabinet shop. Kind of a peek inside of a new shop coming up from ground up. I'd like to thank the owner of the shop for letting me be involved with helping set it up, showing his guys the ropes, and even letting us go in and take a look at it. I also hope it opens your eyes to what's to come on Bowers Creations, some of the things we're going to get into, some of the type of builds we're going to do in the future. I would a lot rather be doing spectacular builds right now, but honestly I'm trying to learn a new skill, which is video and editing and things of that nature. Talking to the camera, that's very difficult, and that's something else I'd like to encourage everyone with. Other than the trade skills I have formal training in, y'all have seen me welding a little bit on the channel. That's been talked about in the comments, but I'm just a hobbyist welder. I did take some classes in my 20s on welding. Total waste of money in my situation. I wish I would have just bought better welding gear and practiced a lot more. Probably my strongest trade outside of what I've been taught in is general carpentry. Most of my high school friends and peers all were some type of carpenter, general carpenter, framers, commercial carpenters. So I've had a lot of mentors as far as general carpentry. Everything else I do it just like you, DIY. The first time, I've only done it a couple times. Shoot, for the first time in my life, I built a suspension and replaced a floor pan in a vehicle. I've never done that before. Just like you, I tried, made mistakes, and kept making mistakes until I got it right. So I hope when you see these videos you don't just shun off an idea because you don't have the skill sets. I really hope it encourages you to maybe look into learning the new skill and trying something new. Anyways, I thank everyone for watching. I hope we catch you next week. Y'all have a good week.